look at a question that's coming from cost behavior. And the question reads, an organization has the following total cost at two activity levels. Activity levels are units in brackets. We've got 17,000 and 22,000. Then total costs, we've got 140,000 and 170,000 respectively. The variable cost per unit is constant in this range of activity, and there is a step up of 5,000 in the total fixed costs when activity exceeds 18,000 units required. What is the total cost at an activity level of 20,000? So is it A, 155,000, B, 158,000, C, 160,000, D, 163,000? So let's look at this question in details. Now, if you look at this question clearly, the first units that we have there, they are 17,000 and the total cost is 140,000. That means that these 17,000 units, they do not exceed the 18,000 there. So meaning in the 140, there is no addition of the 5,000, which happens to be a step up, provided that the units exceed 18,000. Now, in the 22,000 there, the cost is 170,000. That basically tells us that the 5,000 is included. So when we are solving this question, we are supposed to subtract that 5,000 from the 170, which is going to give us the 165. Once we've got our 165, our levels of activity against the total cost is going to be like this now. We're going to have our activity levels, which are the units. In this case, we shall have 17,000 and 22,000. Then the total cost, we're going to have 140,000 and 165,000. Now, when you have this data, we can look at steps now. So step number one, we're supposed to find the variable cost per unit. Now, how do we find the variable cost per unit? So variable cost per unit is equal to the total cost at high level of activity minus the total cost at the low level of activity. Over the total units at high level of activity minus the total units at low level of activity. Okay, so our total cost at high level of activity, it is the 165 there. Then total cost at low level of activity, it is the 140. Then the respective units for 165, it is 22,000. Then for 140, that's 17,000. So if you subtract 165 minus 165,000 minus 140, we're going to get a 25,000 there. Divide the 22,000 minus the 17,000, we're going to get 5,000 units there. So if you divide, you will discover that the variable cost per unit is equal to 5 kwacha per unit. That is step number 1. Once you find your variable cost per unit, we'll have to go to step number 2. And step number 2, you need to find your fixed cost for the period. So we know that total cost is equal to fixed cost plus the variable cost. Okay, so how do we find the fixed cost from that formula? So here we are supposed to find the fixed cost for the period. So we shall say that fixed costs is equal to total costs minus the variable cost. So this is total variable cost, not a variable cost per unit. So what do we do when you want to find the variable cost? We're going to say variable cost multiplied by the units. So in order for us to find our fixed cost in this case, you choose one section. Either we are choosing for the high or we are choosing for the low. Now, when you choose for the high level of activity, that means we need to choose the corresponding cost also, which is the 165. But if we are choosing also for the lower level of activity, that means we need to choose the corresponding cost, which is the 140. So let's assume that we choose for the lower. If you want, you can choose for the high cost, but you still find the same answer. So in this case, we are going to say that our fixed cost is equal to, the total cost there was 140 minus, what's our variable cost per unit? The variable cost per unit was 5 kwacha. Then you multiply by the number of units, which is 17,000 in this case. Okay, so our fixed cost there is equal to 140,000 minus, when you multiply your 5 multiply by 17,000, we're going to get 85,000 there. So therefore, a fixed cost is equal to 55,000. Okay, so meaning as long as the units are less than 18,000, our fixed cost is going to be 55,000. But if our units exceeds 18,000, meaning on the fixed cost, there will be an addition of that 5,000, which is a step up. So once we're done with that, step number 3, we need to develop the total cost equation. total cost equation, or other books are going to say function. So here we know that total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Now, as we may be aware, the total cost is equals to fixed cost plus this variable cost. It is a variable cost per unit multiplied by quantity, which is the level of activity. So therefore, we shall say that total cost is equal to 55,000, which is a fixed cost, plus the variable cost per unit, it's 5, then multiplied by quantity. This total cost equation, it can be used, okay, to help us forecast what our total cost is going to be when we want to produce any unit. Okay, so we'll go back to the question now, knowing that our total cost is equal to 55,000 plus the 5Q, okay, which is a quantity. So look at the question. The question was saying, what is the total cost at an activity level of 20,000 units? So we'll go back where we shall say, okay, we want to find the total cost where our level of activity was 20,000. So meaning if it's 20,000, we had exceeded the 18,000. That means our fixed cost is going to change with an addition of a 5,000. So therefore, we shall say that our fixed cost has increased with the 5,000. So we say total cost is equal to the 55,000 plus the 5,000. Then we're going to say variable cost, which is 5 multiplied by the 20,000. Okay, this one here, when you add your 55 plus your 5,000, it's going to give us 60,000 plus. When you multiply your 5 multiplied by 20,000, it's going to give us 100,000. Therefore, we're going to say total cost in this case is going to be equal to 60,000 plus 100,000. We're going to have 160,000 as our total cost for producing 20,000 units. Okay, so if we're to go back on the choices there, do we have an answer? Yes, we have the answer there, and the answer happens to be C.